Hi everyone, thank you so much for coming to my session. My name is Ali Sibley and I have been working Flytographer for just about 3 years now. If you have never heard of Flytographer before, we connect travelers with local photographers in over 350 cities worldwide, and to this date we have captured over 3 million memories. It's a lot of memories. We've also, in more exciting recent news, we've released a new shoot type, which is called the modern headshot. So the modern headshot session is meant for someone looking for a new profile picture for social media, or perhaps a personal branding photo shoot for their business. Also, it can just be for an individual to get a great headshot to use online somewhere, like maybe on a dating site or on LinkedIn, something like that. So if you'd like to learn more about that, please feel free to head over to flytographer.com and check it out. So I work for Flytographer as a recruiter, so it's my job to vet, interview, hire, and coach new Flytographers around the world. In addition to that, I am also a professional photographer myself, and though I shoot mirrorless with my own personal business, today I am going to be teaching you the core principles of professional photography so that you can translate that professional look into your iPhone shots. So you don't need any professional gear to do what I'm going to show you today, but we're gonna have some fun and make sure it looks really good. I'm going to be sharing 6 tips with you on how to make your Instagram content more engaging and more professional looking. So we're going to start with the importance of directional light and how to understand that. We're also going to be talking about purposeful composition and framing your images in a professional way. And after that, I'm going to be showing you how to edit them. You should always edit your images afterwards. After we go through all that, I'm going to be giving you my tips on how to create a perfect self-portrait. And I hope you'll forgive me. Self-portraits are not something I do too often, so I'll probably be a little awkward about it, but doing my best. And then I'm also going to give you some tips on how to create clean product photography. And this doesn't just have to be if you're selling a product, it can also just be how to translate these concepts into nice flat lays. Like if you want to take a nice picture of your coffee in the morning, if that's a staple of your day and it's important for your followers to understand that about you, whatever it might be, you can use the product photography tips for other things besides pushing a product, of course. And then one fun little extra, I'm going to show you at the end how to make a GIF, still don't know how to say it, but yeah, we're gonna have some fun with that for sure. So the first rule of photography is making sure you understand your lighting. Lighting is the absolute most important thing to keep in mind, as that is going to be the difference between a really flattering shot and a not so special, unflattering one. So there are different types of directional light to be mindful of. The first one is front lighting, of course, which is what's happening to me right now. I have a window in front of me. I also have one beside me, but the blinds are closed, but you might see a little bit of side lighting, which is another kind, coming in here as well. And then the last type is backlighting, which you see a lot of in professional photography when they have sort of a sunburst effect coming through them or coming from behind them. It's also what's used when you want to create silhouettes and things like that. But it's typically a very romantic look. Side lighting can often be a little more experimental and artsy, and front lighting is kind of a classic portraiture look. So really the terms just refer to where the light is originating from, of course. Your light is also affected greatly by the time of day when you are taking your photos. So for the most flattering light, especially for people, I always recommend shooting during the golden hours of the day, which is just after sunrise or just before sunset, the hour kind of before and after. So during that time, the light is lower, the sun is lower, which gives it a more flattering quality. It's not quite so overhead and harsh. So here you can see I started out with front lighting. I'm now moving to side lighting, and you can just see it on the side of my face right here. And then I'm now moving so that the window is behind me, and this is backlighting, so it creates kind of a ring effect. I would also encourage you to experiment with artificial lighting like I've done in this next photo. For this photo, I've used that same light that I showed and used an elastic band to attach the tissue paper over the light so that the light shines the color onto the side of her head. Okay, tip number 2. So being mindful of your composition just means knowing when to follow the typical rules of composition for photography and when it's okay to break them. So some of these terms you might have heard before. The first is rule of thirds, which I will describe later. I'll describe all of these in depth with examples after this. Another one is leading lines. There's also framing and creating depth with your photos. So I'll kind of go through those and show you a bit more now. Okay, so first of all, we have a classic, which is rule of thirds. So you can see here how the grid has separated the photo, and the key component here is that my subject is directly on one of those dividing lines. So you can use this when you're cropping to make sure that your image falls on the correct lines, or you can just be mindful of it when you're taking the image. For this photo, I'm demonstrating leading lines, so you can see here how all the lines in the photograph lead to one central focal point. That's very important for composing your image if you'd like to implement leading lines. The next compositional element I want to talk about is framing. So here you can see by these boxes that we are lucky enough in this barn to have some cool artificial framing to play with. You can also find framing out in nature, whether you're shooting perhaps through a gap in the trees or something like that. But yeah, just look for framing everywhere you go and you'll definitely be able to find something. And then the last thing I want to talk about for composition is depth. So here you can see that the plane's wing is our foreground, the closer mountains are the middle ground, and the hazy mountains that you can barely see are the background. So we have all three clearly represented, and that's the ideal when you're composing with depth in mind. It's very important to always edit your photos. That is what is going to take your photo from part of the masses to a standout photo. So I like to use the Lightroom Mobile app. I also use the Flytographer presets, which are really easy to download and start using in the Lightroom Mobile app anytime. So you'll want to go in there. Editing is very subjective, so do what you think looks best. It's totally up to you. You're the artist behind the lens. So edit however you feel is the most flattering version of the photo, or makes for the most flattering version of the photo. I personally like saturation, high contrast, and warmer tones in general, which I'll show you in a couple editing examples that I'm going to put in here. But basically, just have fun with it, mess around. You can edit on the more natural side, or you can get a little artsy with it. I will try and do both to give you examples of both right after this. Okay, so here I am entering the Lightroom mobile app. These are my photos. I've selected the one I want, which is from a cool camping trip near Vancouver. I've gone to the Flytographer presets and selected nature, I believe it was. And now I'm just kind of making minor adjustments, doing whatever I feel makes the photo even better. And this is something that's just going to come to you with time. So really messing around is the best possible thing you can do. Learning what is in the Lightroom mobile app, which they have so many options for you, it's wonderful. And just puttering around until you feel that your photo is done. Okay, I'm selecting another one now, which was from another fun camping trip. Do you see a trend? And I think I'm going to choose nature for that one as well. That already makes it pop so much more. You're cooking salmon, yum. And then I'm just adjusting it. I'm trying to make this one a little more contrasty, a little more intentionally playful with the colors and tones rather than the one I was doing before, which was a more natural edit. So here I am just messing around and having fun with it. Lastly, I'm going to show you how to get that trendy film-like vibe in your photo. So there you can see I selected curve, which is under the light option, and now I'm just playing with the curve. For your photos, the S curve, which you can see the shape there, is the most ideal in general, and bringing down that bottom that I'm doing right now makes the shadows even deeper, and then taking up the top of the S there makes them lighter. What I'm doing now is the very bottom part, I'm messing with the shadows to make them a bit more faded, which adds a little bit more of that filmy look. And then the most important thing to make it look like film is going to the green option in the curve, and again, taking that bottommost portion and bringing it up so that your shadows are a little bit green. I'm also adding a bunch of grain. Right now I'm just playing with how much I want to make it look even more like film. I'm now going to show you how to take the perfect self-portrait. And by perfect, I mean I am going to give you all the elements to create the best self-portrait for yourself. I personally am not a huge taker of self-portraits, so I hope I am not too awkward in this, so whatever happens, please forgive me. Okay, so for this first one, I've set myself up so that I'm looking at the window on my tripod. I turn live mode off, which is important for better quality. And then I go to self timer and choose 3 seconds for the most ideal time to give myself some time to compose how I want to look. My next spot here is to get some side lighting, so I have a window on either side of where I'm going to be sitting. And then lastly, I've set myself up on the couch here for a backlighting example. Okay, now I'm going to show you how I would edit a self-portrait. So again, I'm choosing a Flytographer preset as a starting off point. And then I always like a little more of a brighter image for people. It's also good to reduce some of those shadows from under the eyes and such. I always like a little bit of a warmer tone for skin tones, and I always put the tint just a little towards the purple, again, for more natural skin tones. Another thing you'll see me doing here in a minute is playing with the noise reduction tool. So bringing that up just a tiny little bit helps to take away some of the texture, especially in the skin, so everything looks just a little bit smoother. You don't want to use too much noise reduction, otherwise your image will start to look cloudy and unnatural. And then lastly, I want the blue in my sweater and jeans to pop, so I've gone into the color mix tool and upped those blues. On to tip number 5. So this one is all about product photography, and this doesn't necessarily mean that all of you will be using these tips to take photos of products you're going to sell on a website or something like that from your Instagram. It more so gives you techniques for how to take some really fun photos with everyday objects. So it could be a fun new plant you've just bought, or your coffee cup in the morning. Whatever you think, I am going to give you some fun techniques for how to take everyday objects and make them a little more exciting for your Instagram content. As a first step, I've just gone around my house and found some things that I think might add fun elements to the photos. So here I am just showing all the things that I found and that I'm going to work with. You can see that my setup for product photography is very simple. I shoot near a window for natural light, use a piece of curved poster board as my backdrop, and the tripod is optional.
Simple one-item product shots like this, you'll want to play with the exposure before you actually take the photo, just to make sure you're reducing shadows on the backdrop as much as possible. I also reduce the shadows even more when I'm editing the image. Here you can see I'm just having fun playing with the arrangement of everything, and then after this I'll show you a couple examples of the shots I did take.
Okay, tip 6, my very last tip for you, which is all about creating a GIF for your brand. So I find this to be the most fun and exciting thing ever. I implement this a lot in my photography. So I like to deliver GIFs to my couples who I photograph, and it's really just stringing together a bunch of images into a cute little video. So I'm going to show you how to set up the shot, take the shots, and then string them together in Canva for a super seamless GIF.
For this first GIF, I'm just blowing on the candle to create some movement. I'm also eventually going to blow it out, and I'm just taking photos the whole time to capture all of it. I've now gone over to canva.com and I'm going to create a mobile video. I've already imported all my candle images, and I'm going to drag and drop them onto the page and then change everything to 0.2 seconds. This takes a while as you have to add them all individually. It might just be that I've been doing it wrong all this time, but this is the way I do it. Once I have all of my images in place and they're all the correct amount of time, I select them all and duplicate either 3 or 4 times. My way of doing things isn't a true GIF. I do download it as an MP4 video, but I find that if I just duplicate it a couple times, it works out the same for social media. Here's the final candle GIF. I didn't end up editing this one at all, but I did create another one, which you'll see in a second, which was a fun little stop motion one that I edited after the fact, just within the iPhone editing tools.
Well, that's all, folks. Thank you so much for joining me. Again, my name is Allie, and I so appreciate all of you listening to me ramble all about photography. I really hope you learned a lot today, and that you take lots of this with you and you go out and get inspired and start taking shots right away. I hope you're able to implement the tips that I mentioned about lighting, composition, and editing your shots, and that also you're now able to take the perfect self-portrait and the perfect product shots for your business, for your Instagram. If you have any questions at all, feel free to reach out to us on Instagram at Flytographer, or find us at flytographer.com. We'd be so happy to hear from you, and thank you so much again. I really appreciate all of you.